There's a real long beaver dam out here in front of me. Starts out there and goes all the way across the bottom right here, all the way back to where the main creek canal is. All this is froze out in here. I can hear that ice popping. Sun's starting to slowly hit it. There's been 2 or 3 days here that's passed and the sun hadn't hardly hit much of nothing to thaw anything out. A very natural type environment here. All the cypress knees and cypress trees. I'm gonna tell a little story here in the next few minutes about something I've heard about all my life. That's supposedly a true story. Been hearing about it for many, many years. I'll tell you about it here in just a second, but first I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna show you a couple old whiskey still sites right up here behind me. Man, you wouldn't want to fall down in here. Land yourself into those, it'd be nearly impossible to miss those things. Get hit right in the face. There's 2 or 3 big natural springs coming out of this hill. One's right here, and there's 2 more about, I don't know, anywhere from 150 up to 250 or so yards behind me coming out of this same hill. And I guess this was an old whiskey still that was here many years ago. I can see some holes in the other sides of those barrels where somebody hit them with an axe. What you can plainly see is based on the hole or the marking in that barrel, in that metal, that it was an axe that hit it. So from many years ago. But over behind that other barrel, you can see there's another barrel behind it buried in that spring, and right up from it I barely see the end of another one. And then right there by that dog is another one. So there was a pretty good couple of operations around here back in the day. I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna walk back up through here and show you these other spots. I'm walking a little path here that's cut into the side of this hill all the way down through here. I walked up and down through here most of my life, and a lot of my earlier ancestors has done the same thing. It's a pretty area in through here. All these old beech trees. I've been doing a little detecting this morning. I found some old early 1900s Remington shot shell head stamps again already this morning. I'm almost over here to where I think there was another whiskey still at one time. Real pretty natural area in here. There's another big natural spring coming out of the hill right here. There used to be more barrels laying here in this spot. I don't know what happened to them. Nobody moved them that I know of. I don't know what happened to them. There's one left laying right there. But I'm still continuing on this same path. This path is kind of cut into the edge of this hill, and it's pretty much level to walk on it, even that you're on this slope. amazing to look at some of these barrels sometimes, the different markings on them. There's where it's been shot a couple of times, bullet holes. There's another big natural spring, probably the biggest one right on down here, just a little further. There's your big acorn tree right there. My dad, well, my granddad used to walk this trail every day when he'd get home from school. It's an everyday thing, coming down here to the creek, especially during warm weather. I'll tell you more about that here in just a second as I get to the main subject of this video here. This is one of the prettiest spots in the country that I know of. These big rocks like they are. There's another big natural spring right here coming out of the hill. Most interesting thing coming around these rocks this time of the year. Look at those icicles down there. They get really big here almost every year. Some years it don't get cold enough with enough moisture at the same time to make them, but most years it does, or will. I'm still on the same path I talked about, coming up around these rocks, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell you or begin to tell you a little story here. There's where different folks, even myself, has engraved our names on this tree over the years. This story came from my granddad. I've heard it all my life, and it was a true story. He said it was, and it's about a big black wildcat that he seen in this area when he was growing up, and nobody never knew exactly what it was. All that they could say is it was about the size of a black panther or a cougar, but it just solid jet black. And of course, one of the old-time phrases for that type of cat or name was a Wampus Cat. I've heard it all my life. People talks about, don't go out here, or don't go out over there at night, you know, or don't go to this spot or this place, you know, Wampus Cat's gonna catch you or get you or something. That's always been an old saying. But the way it used to be, my granddad would get home from school, and it was an everyday thing, especially during warm weather, that he'd get his rifle, .22 rifle, and his fishing pole, and he'd come to the creek every day, fish. And he always walked along this trail up through here by these rocks. Look at them icicles, pretty amazing. That biggest one right there, it may not look like it in the video, it's big as my arm. It's still froze to the ground. That was there probably a month ago like that. But he saw this big cat back out here. I'll get closer to where he was here in just a second. But first I'm gonna tell you right here, There was a distant cousin of my granddad's. I guess that's what he would have been. His name was Robert Taylor. I'd mentioned him back in an earlier video that I done on the Nethery church and school building site. But he come down here. He was a constable back then, Robert was. And he got up under this rock right here and attempted to build a little fire. There was a little pile of sticks up under this rock. And he left this rock, and the old mill pond is right on the other side of that levee you can see down there going straight across. And he failed to return home, so some people come looking for him, and they tracked him, seen where he walked out there at the edge of that mill pond. He was a constable, but he drank real bad. And his tracks was going up to that mill pond, but they never came back. So somebody, whoever it was that day and time, had suspicion that he had fell in that mill pond and went under and drowned. So there was several different people got together. I can't remember. Some uncles of mine can tell some names of who the people was, but had Robert's brother to wade out into the mill pond, and he felt around with his foot, and he felt Robert laying on the bottom of that mill pond. And he took his foot and pulled up on his body, and Robert's body come floating to the top. And then Robert's brother passed out in the water, and somebody else had to jump in and get him before he drowned. But that's the story on that. But as my granddad walked on up this trail, he got up here within pretty good seeing range of the mill area, the grist mill area that is. And there's a big cypress tree out there on the bank of the canal. Got some long limbs sticking out on it. I can almost see it from right here. I just barely can see it because I know where it is. But at that time, the country was a little different right in here. It probably wasn't hardly as thick as it is now. But he could see a big black cat, looked like a panther, laying up across the limbs in that big cypress tree out there. It was the same thing that himself and his grandpa always called a Wampus Cat, which I don't know if it's a cougar or if it's a mountain lion or what. It looks like one, but it's solid jet black. I don't know where they ever came from, if they were released at some point around the country by folks that might have had one as a pet or what. I don't know. I've never seen one, but I've heard many a tale about people that has. But he made it up to the point where he spotted that big cat. And he said he slowly turned around on this trail where we just come from. And he slowly started easing back toward his grandpa's house. His grandpa lived about half a mile back up here, maybe not that far. And he didn't know if the big cat ever saw him or not. And he said he didn't think the cat seen him, best he could tell, but he never did know. But he just eased out of here real slow, and once he got back up that trail a pretty good little ways, he said he turned loose and took off running just as fast as he could go. But later on, after several years, I think him and one of his brothers was cutting putwood about 5 or 6 miles west of here. And my granddad said he saw the same thing cross one of the county blacktop roads in the front of him. He said solid jet black cat with a big, huge, long tail. And said it was the same thing that he saw laying up in that tree down here. But like I say, he said it used to be an everyday thing. I mean, that was the first thing. You got home from school and he got his rifle and his fishing pole and come to the creek. And a lot of times the reason he carried his .22 rifle was so if he throwed across and got his lure hung on the bank on the other side of the creek, he could take that rifle and he could shoot the limb off. Because he hated to lose his lures. He had to order his lures out of the Sears catalog back then. That was in about the early 50s, I guess, when all this went on. Maybe mid 50s, I think, best I remember. And it was a shame to lose one of those lures when you had to order all of them back then. He tried not to lose no more of them than he had to. I'm gonna go on up here and show you this cypress tree. All right, I'm gonna tell you something else here involving the big wildcat back from many years ago. I'll have to flip this camera around. All right, I'm up on the top of the hill, right above where my granddad saw that big wildcat. And there's a road coming up through here. It comes from that way. And there's a trail that continues and goes straight across. There's another road that turns and goes this way. And there's another trail that goes down to the mill area where the cat was spotted. Many years ago, my granddad's sister's son, he was a big trapper. And he trapped on this place one time. And I heard him state the story several times that he put a trap right on this point right here. And of course, any place like this is a good place to set any kind of a trap, like to catch predators, coyotes, bobcats, fox, stuff like that. Because when you got through a spot where there's 3 or 4 different trails coming together like this, it's a good intersecting point for a lot of critters to pass through here, you know. And coyotes and bobcats and fox and different stuff, they're going to walk these roads and walk these trails. They're kind of like we are. They're going to take the path of least resistance as long as they don't sense any type of danger in that area. But I've set traps and caught coyotes here before. I've caught fox right here before too. But the story is, he bedded a trap on this point one time and left it bedded. And of course, what I mean by bedded, you dig a hole that's the same deep, it's deep as the trap is thick, or from top to bottom, from the bottom of the trap to the top of the pan. And you take fine dirt, you bed that trap in that hole, and you take fine dirt and sift over the top. And that's what's called bedding the trap. And he bedded the trap right here. And it snowed that night, I believe it was. And that next morning, the whole ground was froze around the trap. Everything was froze. And he said that next morning when he come back to check that trap, there was a large footprint that was a cat track in the snow, right center on top of that trap. And the only reason the trap didn't go off and catch him by the foot was, he said, the trap was froze and it couldn't fire or go off. But my aunt's son there, he talked about that numerous times, that he would have caught whatever that cat was if that trap just hadn't have been froze. It's just kind of amazing to listen to those stories like that. All right, I'm down here at this is old mill pond right here where I had done a previous video on the Bartley grist mill. This is the same area. This is a cypress tree that the wildcat or Wampus Cat or mountain lion or panther, whatever you want to call it, was up in. But my granddad, was coming down here to fish at this spot. There's a high levee that drops off the back side of that mill right there. And that's always been one of the best fishing holes right there in this part of the country all my life since I was a kid. Everybody always come here and fished. But you can see that's a real high bank dropping off. And there's a lot of fish right here. Bass and catfish. There's some crappie in here, a lot of brim. But straight in front of the camera right now is where that trail comes off around those rocks you seen a second ago there. And when he come out of where that trail comes out by the top of those rocks, he could look across and he could see that big cat laying up in this cypress tree right here. But this tree's got a lot of limbs on it. And he said he's about 20 feet or so laid up in those limbs, and he could look across from that hill over there and see him. And that's when he turned and went back. But I remember my granddad telling me stories about when he was growing up as a kid, his grandpa would be sitting around the fireplace in the wintertime, and his mother also, and they tell all these old stories about these Wampus cats and wild cats and all kinds of different stuff. Said people would sit around outside the house at night, you know, and hear these big cats making screaming noises, sound like a woman screaming, and just all kinds of different stuff and different tales. But that's pretty much a story I've heard all my life on the Wampus Cat, to put it. My granddad, he swore up and down that it is a true story, and I don't see why he would have had any reason to lie about it. A lot of people don't believe that kind of different stuff, but he actually said he saw it. And then, as I stated there earlier, he saw another cat of the same type several years later. And but he said it was just a kind of scary moment, seeing that big old cat laying up there, and he's afraid he's gonna come down out of that tree and catch him, I guess. But I guess I'm gonna end this video right here. That's pretty much the story. Best I can remember stuff. So hope you enjoyed the story. I feel pretty fortunate to spend the time that I do in the outdoors and tell some stories that I do, and I got planned to tell more stories in the next near future. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Mosses Creek Outdoors.